Hi everyone. So today I want to talk about perspective and drawing in perspective and some of the things that make some of the things that make it really hard for people to draw in perspective. Why it is that some people will draw or try to learn how to draw for years and never really get anywhere and never quite feel like they're really grasping being able to draw in perspective. And it's always been my view that whenever you draw in perspective, you are drawing from a perspective, from a singular point in space. And you're creating an optical illusion, a three-dimensional optical illusion on a two-dimensional flat medium. Now, you're probably wondering why it is that we're looking at my drawing tablet and why it is that my drawing tablet has a big gaping hole in it. What I have done is I've just painted. I've simply painted all of the surrounding stuff in here. It's not even a particularly good painting. You can even see all the brushworks and the little gaps and my attempt at wood grain. But if we view this image from perspective, so I just bring that back in and just a second here. Got to get this thing to... Oh, I'm no wonder why I'm using the wrong keyboard. There we go. That's much better. Okay, so if we look back at the desk camera, all right, what I've done is if we see this painting at the right perspective, it's at the right angle and everything, it just blends in with all of the information that's back there. What I'm doing is I've replicated... I simply have I've put my camera in a fixed position, and I painted not while looking at my tablet, but rather looking at my tablet through that camera. So you are now seeing everything the way that I would have seen things. And what I do is when I try to paint in perspective, I take the perspective of the world outside here from my own vantage point, and I extend it into the canvas. I take what's out here and I push it in there. And so in doing this, I'm leveraging all of my own sense of natural depth perception and using that as I paint onto the canvas. Now, I understand that when you start out and you have a blank canvas like this, right? The illusion just goes away, right? What a huge difference. The other thing is that when I painted this painting, I went through, I took some efforts to try and match the lighting conditions, to match the pixel luminance, like just make it so that the whatever I was painting was just as bright as the surroundings and that the camera could not tell the difference. So, there's other things that you try to do is that you're trying to replicate reality. You're trying to replicate, and reality is whatever your camera happens to be picking up, whatever your eyes happen to be picking up. You have to understand the vision system. In this case, the camera is the vision system. You have to understand the vision system that is perceiving all of this information, and to paint in such a way that accommodates that vision system. Now, most people will not take a web camera and mount it above their canvas. This is an excellent way to learn how to paint, by the way. It's an excellent way to learn how to draw in perspectives, because you're now acutely aware of the vantage point. You're acutely aware of the amount of light and color and all these things, and it makes it really easy for you to make an adjustment, because for you to paint these things, because the camera has a limited range. Your eyes actually do a lot of auto adjustment, and that actually trips up a lot of people. Whereas the camera will bring everything down to a limited range of luminance values. It's a completely fixed point in space, and the camera is only one point in space. So I'm gonna talk about all the things that make it difficult for people to take this flat piece of paper and make it look like it's three-dimensional. So the reason why people have difficulty drawing in three dimensions when they have these wonderful vision systems is that these wonderful vision systems that are our eyes, or our two eyes, or three or four, however many you have, they're too good. They're too good, and the problem is that they are giving you exactly what is there, which is when you sit in front of a blank piece of paper on your tablet sitting right over there, your eyes see exactly that. They see a flat piece of paper, and that is not what we're trying to. That's not what the illusionist sets out to convey to people. That's not what the illusionist sets out to capture. The illusionist must take, like a magician or a sorcerer, well, a magician. The illusionist must take that flat piece of paper and you must eliminate all contrary information, all information that tells you that that thing is a flat piece of paper. Except, and then you must institute your own depth cues. You must institute your own information that tells people, oh my God, I'm looking through a hole in my tablet. Okay, that's what it means to be an illusionist. I worked in visual effects. This all comes from my visual effects experience. It's not like groundbreaking new stuff. It's that if you work in visual effects, you are creating digital illusions, you're an illusionist. And so you must have a really good grasp. You must be able to observe reality and then regenerate and replicate that reality within your canvas or within your footage or whatever it is. So eliminate all contrary information. Well, before I just tell you, okay, eliminate all contrary information, let's look at what kind of information we have to deal with. Well, one of the easiest things to explain would be, here, let me just get this thing up on a top monitor. Here we are. Would be binocular depth perception. So if we imagine looking down at a person's head from top down, this is a great little program called GeoGebra. We imagine looking down at a person's from top down, and we see their eyeballs looking forward. You've got two eyes. And when you're looking at the camera, in this case, the camera illusion is it's one eye, right? This is just a singular vantage point, right? So already, you could take one of these. Here, I can just take this one and just hide this object and hide that object. Okay, and now we've only got it down to a single eye. So now we're already functioning more like the web camera in that we've only got one eye. Whereas when you have two eyes open and you're looking at your canvas, one of the problems is you see how your eyes start to cross when the object gets really, really close. Your eyes are, your mind is taking kind of the angle of your eyes, is taking the two separate vantage points, is looking at this object. It's the focal point. It's looking at it from two different angles. And so, that information is going to tell you how far away the object is. Then we have another problem, which would be focal. I call it, it's a focal depth perception. So focal depth of perception, or also known as depth of field, is when you look at your eye, or sorry, you can't look at your own eye any more than you can eat your own teeth. But if we take the camera here, right? If I moosh my hand up really close, see that? Everything gets all blurry, and then the camera starts to auto-adjust. It starts to focus on my hand up close. You can see all the one wrinkly of my hand. We pull away, it goes out of focus, and then the camera focuses again. This is focal depth perception. So the thing is that your eye will naturally make adjustments, and your mind can tell, how far away things are. It uses that focal adjustment to tell you how far away things are. So even after you put on an eye patch to go into full monocular mode, then there's the problem of things. Your eye will focus on the piece of paper and will tell you whether it's in focus or not in focus. And that is another piece of conflicting information. We don't want to be thinking of this thing as a flat piece of paper. We want to look into the thing. And so we must eliminate the focal information. So one of those things is we shut the eye and then we defocus one of our eyes. Meaning we don't make any concerted effort. You kind of let your eye rest. You let it drift out of focus. Things go all blurry. And you use that when you're checking your drawing. Whenever you're like, is this thing look like it's in perspective? You let your eye defocus. You let it fuzz out a bit. And that is a way to relax the focal depth perception, is to get rid of that. So, you have to close one eye or patch one eye and fuzz your eye out for the focal depth perception. And there's even another reason why we need to defocus our eyes. So that would be another thing that's a little bit hard to understand. This would be foveal. I call it's fovea cell density. So this has to do more with the retinal backing of your eye. And so the backing of your eye on the inside of that sphere is this a layer of sensory cells, light sensors. You've got rods and cones. It's if we were to look at how dense, if I just click this thing here, we can see how densely populated those cells are. So the thing is, on the periphery of your vision, the density of the cells is a lot less. Every single one of these cells is basically like a pixel. It's like a pixel point of your camera, except that unlike a camera, which has a digital camera, which has a uniform distribution of sensor cells or sensors, it's different in us in the sense that the center is much more, like you have much finer resolution. The resolution at the sides of your vision at your periphery is pretty much shit. But within a 2 degree cone in your eye, so we look here, all right, you can see that within a 2 degree cone of your eye, you can see a lot, like if we look at the spatial density here, right, we can see how much higher the density of cells are, how much higher the resolution is. More cells in a small area is higher resolution. And not only that, you've got two main kinds of vision cells. You've got rods and you have cones. Rods are more, they're kind of like your night vision cells. They're black and white. They sense only intensity of light. There are still cones at the side, which means that we're not seeing in black and white on the periphery, but there's not that many, just enough to tell you how much color there is. But the rods are really, those are what you use for your peripheral sight. And kind of fun fact that if it's nighttime, you'll see here, right, that the amount of rods, which are your night vision cells, they drop off right down to nothing, right, whenever you're staring at something, whereas they're much higher just beside it. And your cones, which are necessary for reading, if you're reading letters, you're looking at people's faces, that kind of things, right? Your eyeballs stare directly at it. That's where the cones are. So if it's nighttime and you want to you're looking at something that's pretty small, don't stare directly at it, because if you do, you're focusing the part of your eye which has the least amount of rods at it, the part which is the least light sensitive. So what you actually have to do is you have to look just slightly to the side of that object to pick up that object. You'll be able to see things in the dark, a lot better if you're not staring directly at them. But in the case of drawing, if we think about, I call this, there's a thing I like to call optic bandwidth. So optical bandwidth means that, whatever information you're picking up from the camera eyeballs that you have, every single one of those light sensors is going to take up a certain amount of information. Information has to go down a little pipeline. And the higher the resolution of the image, the more powerful of a processor you need to deal with that image. And so the problem is that you can see that we have this really, really high density of cells here. And so a lot of your optic bandwidth, a lot of your, the processing power of your visual cortex is sucked up right here in the middle of your eye, right? This is where it's happening. This is where the party is. But further off to the peripheral vision, it's a lot lower. Now, the reason why I'm telling you this is because our sense of perspective does not come from a single point in space. It doesn't come from the single point in space that we're staring at. It comes from an overall spatial awareness which is picked up from your peripheral vision. It's picked up from all the stuff around you. So by defocusing your eyes, what you do is you are now attenuating the amount of information that's coming in here. You're now going to de-res all of this stuff in the middle here. You're going to de-res it down to the point where it's at the level of what's in your peripheral vision. It means that your central vision is now just as crappy as your peripheral vision, and it allows you to now process the overall image. Whereas the problem is that when people focus on images, when beginners focus on a thing, their eye focuses on it, then what happens is all of that optic bandwidth is now sucked up by the center. At the center point, all of their optic bandwidth is sucked up by their central processor, and so they lose their ability to deal with perspective. They lose their perspective sense, and now they're just trying to read like letters on a page as opposed to trying to look into the image. So two simple things, which I should have said at the start, I'll probably throw it in at an annotation, is just defocus your eyes and patch one of them when you're just starting out. Patch your non-dominant eye when you're just starting out, and practice drawing and trying to get into the state where you're seeing the illusion, right? Remember when you're, when you're seeing this illusion and you can, it feels real to you. It feels like you can reach in. that's when it's working. It's when it starts to no longer feel like a flat page. So you have to practice this kind of thing. And even when you get it once, it's still going to feel kind of unusual or unnatural to you. And all of those little, drawing exercises and whatnot, you just have to practice them until you can kind of see in the page and you get that feeling of the illusion, and it feels three-dimensional to you. Because if you're going to create optical illusions, which if the goal of your optical illusion is to fool other people into thinking that it's actually real, you have to be the first one fooled. You have to be able to fool yourself into this sense of perspective, because it's like if you were a chef, right? If you cook things, you generally have to smell and taste test and make adjustments. And this is no different. When you're creating optical illusions, you're being able to fall into the illusion and then kind of critically tell when the illusion is falling apart, and to go in there and amend those parts to reinforce the illusion. That's all part of the same taste testing and adjustment that a chef makes when he's cooking food. So yeah. Anyway, that's it. Don't want to make this go any longer, and I will see you later.